Hannah. So I think, like a lot of us know, that the importance of both clinical diversity and inclusion. Understanding the different values, whether it's based on culture or religion. When we talk about dealing with different patients, is really important. I think, personally, I'm culture competent, but also I don't know. Reading that article really put into perspective that what we think about cultural competence and how we act may not be exactly true. If the average of athletic trainers think they're very competent and aware, but then when they actually do the testing that they're not, it's kind of hard to tell, especially if you've grown up kind of in the same area or around the same people. How can we actually tell if we are actually doing what we think that we are? So I guess I hope I am. I try at least my best to. I think it's very important both academically and clinically to, be diverse and accept that diversity. Because if you don't, then your patients or athletes or even students won't respect you. And they might not even want to come to you. We talked the 1 week about bedside manner and how important that is when treating patients, and I think it's the same thing with cultural competency as well. If you're not appreciating, who they are, how they act, then that's not fair to them, and they might not want to deal with you in that matter anymore. So I do think it is very important, and I think our students hopefully are getting that experience when they're out at clinicals. Again, I think it matters where they're placed and maybe who they're with as well. Personally, I haven't experienced a whole lot of challenges with it. I mentioned in the perusal, the biggest thing for me, I think, is language barriers. We had a lot of people from like the Congo who are at Jesuit, or people in like South America, and especially if they played soccer, and sometimes it was a language barrier. Like, I didn't understand what they were saying, and so you can either try to communicate with them the best you can. For us, we were lucky. Within our program, we had 3 students from the South America, and they were dispersed. None of them were in my year, but we had, a few years above me, and then one right above me, and then one below me. So normally one of them was in the training room, so if you did an issue, you can call them over. And they played rugby, soccer, and baseball. So they're always kind of in there, whether they're getting treatment or helping athletes as well. So we were really lucky with that, but I don't think you get that everywhere. And there was kind of, from my perspective, the students were kind of understanding if you didn't understand something, like, hey, Andres, can you help me, with this patient? And they all would be super helpful. I think that was my biggest issue, is just a language barrier. And we did take medical Spanish, so I kind of understood some of it, but it's only one semester, how we can't be too fluent with that as well. But I haven't experienced anyone really be discriminatory, at least when it comes to athletes. Now, I've been discriminated against by parents because I'm so young and I'm a female, but I think that's a little different because I'm supposed to be helping their kid and they look down on me for that. But I haven't with like job offers or anything. I do know that I was talking to a job position I was going to get, and I actually did not get hired for it in time. And it was a baseball position over the summer, my junior year, and it was with the Washington Wild Things. And they discriminated against the other athletic trainer because she was a female. So they actually, one of the students, his name was Chris, he went there instead. He was my age, and he's like, no, like, and he's talking afterwards, like, I'm glad you didn't go there because, the athletic trainer, like, if you weren't a male, you really couldn't go in their room, and none of the baseball players would even go to you if you were a female. And so he saw it firsthand of how they treated this, her name was Brittany, how they treated this athletic trainer, even though she was a female. She was more qualified than Chris was, but they just went to Chris because he was a male over her. So I haven't personally experienced it, but I have seen and been told stories of, athletic trainers being it because of their gender. It was a minor league baseball team, but still, so it definitely happens, and I think it happens on both sides, whether it's the clinician, him or herself, maybe treating athletes differently, or even the athletes seeing something if you're the clinician is young or female or of a different race or anything. But something that I think is really important that I haven't experienced, but not that I want to, but I hope that I can teach our students to, is religion. I think that's a really important one to be competent about as well when it comes to, oh gosh, I can't even think of their names, but if, they don't like being touched, or if what kind of religion they're a part of, or what is it, Ramadan maybe, I can't remember, when you have to care about what you eat and when you eat as well. One of the MSAT ones did a presentation on that last year, and I thought it was really cool. He talked about practices and how they had to move to later at night, and the coaches had to be kind of understanding of that. And it was a really cool presentation because it kind of put in perspective, I didn't even think about, when you can't eat until midnight, how that affects your practice schedules and how that affects your ability to work out, and, understanding as a trainer, as a coach, as a student, to take that into account. I thought that presentation was really cool, of how these, I think mostly they were in Europe, the studies of how they actually adapted to their schedule so that they could, not starve themselves while practicing. So it was after sundown they had to practice or whatever. I could be totally wrong on what that is, but it was a really cool presentation, and I think it put in perspective of what goes into it and how much you have to think about religion, and not only just race or ethnic or age or sex, stuff like that. So I'm running out of time, so I'll be really fast for the next part, but I think it'd be really cool to learn about kind of what you do, and I know we've talked a lot about how to implement things into athletic training, but how, what's kind of the job of the clinical coordinator, and how do we make contracts with these institutions. You talk a lot about SUMA and UH and Cleveland Clinic, and I know you don't like Cleveland Clinic as much as the other ones, but how do we make those contacts? How do we create those connections? Is it they reaching out to you, or is it you reaching out to their supervisor, or do you reach out to the schools themselves? Are you working directly with SUMA for instance? Are you working with Jeremy, who is from SUMA, or you work with individual athletic trainers there? So I would like to know a little bit more about that. Consider that something I would love to do in the future. So that's all I got. Have a great week.